Welcome back to UK Homicide. On the 30th May 2019, a 40-year-old man was found confused in Walthamstow. 5 days later, the body of Adrian Murphy, aged 43, was found in his 11th floor flat in Battersea. He was thought to have laid undiscovered for 3 days before he was found by his best friend and former partner. Adrian, a talented dance teacher and a choreographer at the Royal Academy of Dance, was on a year-long sabbatical at the time of his death. The first man survived and was taken to hospital after being found by a neighbor naked, extremely agitated and confused. Diana Christea, 19, together with her partner Joel Osei, 25, from Seven Sisters, London, used fake Grindr profiles to befriend men before drugging, stealing their possessions, and emptying their bank accounts. After Adrian's death, the pair stole his valuables, used his cards to buy computer software and food, and even attempted to buy £62,000 worth of diamonds from a jeweler in New York using Adrian's PayPal account. Toxicology reports from both the surviving victim and Adrian's body confirm the presence of scopolamine, which is more commonly known as the devil's breath. It is frequently used in sexual assaults and kidnappings in South America. The pair would probably have got away with these crimes if they had not fallen out. Christea called 999 and told the operator about the murder. The police found stolen items at her home, and text messages between her and Osei proved their plan to commit these drugging and robbery offenses. The week before the trial started, under COVID conditions and social distancing, the Lord Chief Justice said trials involving juries would begin in some courts, such as the Old Bailey. However, Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb ruled that this trial would be too long and complex to proceed. The trial would eventually start in January 2021 at Croydon Crown Court and would hear evidence related to both victims. The couple were formally charged with 1 count of murder, 1 count of administering a poison or noxious substance to endanger life, 2 counts of theft, and 8 counts of fraud. Osei admitted manslaughter and an alternative charge of administering poison with intent to injure, aggrieve, or annoy, as well as 7 counts of fraud. He denied 2 counts of theft. Christea admitted 1 count of fraud and 2 counts of handling stolen goods. Joel Osei's defense. Joel Osei denied the murder of Adrian Murphy, saying that he did not intentionally kill him and only intended to cause serious harm or incapacitation. He maintained the death was just an unfortunate consequence of his actions and sought to downplay the premeditation and intent required for a murder conviction. They also argued that while he might have been involved in the crime, he was not responsible for every aspect of the planning and execution, attempting to reduce his culpability. Christea, like Osei, denied being directly involved in the murder. Instead, she claimed that she was unaware of the full extent of Osei's intentions and the consequences of their actions. She argued that she was a passive accomplice, but not a direct participant. They suggested that she was coerced and emotionally manipulated by Osei, who was the one directing their criminal activities, and that she was not aware that Adrian would be murdered. Her defense tried to further minimize her role in the murder, suggesting it was mainly related to the theft of personal items and the use of credit cards. The prosecution rejected both defense arguments, showing overwhelming evidence of premeditation, manipulation, and planning. Forensic evidence, including toxicology reports showing the devil's breath in Adrian's system, contradicted the claims of accidental death or lack of intent.
Welcome to Bogota, Colombia. We're here chasing after the most dangerous drug in the world, burundanga. Burundanga is the source of scopolamine, which is basically like the worst roofie you can ever imagine, times a million. You're at the whim of suggestions like, hey, take me to your ATM. Hey, come with me to the hotel room, while you're completely conscious and articulate. So the deal with burundanga is that it pretty much eliminates your free will. So you're awake and you're articulate, and to anyone else watching you, it seems like you're perfectly fine, but you've completely lost control of your own actions. So you're at the whim of suggestions, and that's how people take advantage of you. We heard one particularly chilling story where a guy was taken back to his apartment, woke up the next morning in the empty apartment, completely confused as to what happened, went down and said to his doorman, you know, why is my apartment empty? What happened? And the doorman said, well, you brought it out with two of your friends last night, all your stuff, you loaded it into a van. And the guy was like, why in the hell would you let me do that? And he was like, because you told me to. So that's kind of the stuff we're dealing with here. Complete elimination of free will while still acting. The borrachero tree, which by the way roughly translates to drunken binge tree, is indigenous to the northern Andean region. That includes Colombia and Ecuador, Venezuela. But the scopolamine is really only used by the criminal element here in Colombia. So despite the insane homicide rates, the kidnapping, the narco trafficking, the civil unrest, and everything else going on in here in Colombia, we can't seem to find a Colombian who's more scared of anything than falling asleep under the borrachero tree.
For this case, the joint criminal enterprise theory was applied, saying the pair were both equally responsible for the murder, assault, theft, and fraud. The use of toxic drugs was key in establishing premedication. Both were aware of its lethal potential and had used it before in other attacks. So while both Osei and Cristea tried to distance themselves from the charges, neither defense stood up to scrutiny. 4 key pieces of forensic and witness evidence allowed the jury to reject their defense and convince them of their guilt. First, we have the presence of scopolamine. The duo knew it could cause paralysis, unconsciousness, and death. Tests on Adrian showed his cause of incapacitation and eventual death was due to the drugs that Osei was shown to purchase online. Crime scene analysis found devil's breath in an empty Coca-Cola can found in Adrian's flat. Finally, this drug was found in the victim, poisoned just days before Adrian's death. This reinforced the repeated use of this little-known drug in their crimes. The second key evidence came from digital forensics, which showed how they used fake Grindr profiles to lure victims, and their phones revealed the messages between them and the victims. These communications were used to establish the sequence of events leading to Adrian's death and showed their efforts to deceive victims. They also revealed that the pair were in constant contact before and after the murder. In fact, Osei made 23 calls to Cristea while at Adrian's flat. They also traced the stolen credit cards and other items, such as electronics, and found her selling them online. Key evidence number 3 was CCTV footage that captured Osei entering and leaving the flat and carrying a bag of stolen goods. The last and crucial piece of evidence identified Osei as the one who set up the Grindr date, drugged and robbed the unnamed surviving victim. While not primary evidence, his fingerprints were found on a whiskey bottle in Adrian's flat. Cristea wept as she was sentenced to life by Mr. Justice William Davis, with a minimum term of 16 years for the murder of Adrian and an additional 30 months for the attack on the other victim. He said, "You were an active and willing participant in this plan. You knew scopolamine was being used and you knew what it could do." He added, "You gave Mr. Murphy, quite deliberately, a significant dose of a drug which you know could cause death. You expected to gain from this plan. You knew scopolamine was being used and knew what it could do." However, he acknowledged she was just 17 at the time of the offenses and had a troubled and disturbed life before meeting Osei, an older man, who was the more dominant partner in crime. For his role in Adrian's murder, Osei was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 32 years and a concurrent 5-year sentence for administering a poison or noxious substance to endanger the life of the surviving victim. No separate penalty was imposed on the pair for the multiple counts of theft and fraud. Justice Davis said, "Your expectation was that shame and embarrassment on the part of those victims would mean, in all likelihood, they would not report it. You left him either dying or dead. And what did you do then? You set about using his debit and credit cards, which you had stolen." Following these verdicts, Robert Murphy paid tribute to his inspirational brother. He said his death had left a huge void within the family. He made so many loyal friends who are so sad at his untimely passing, as he was an inspirational Irishman who was a gifted dancer and choreographer, he said. Adrian's legacy is that of a hero, and hopefully his tragic death has stopped this happening to any other innocent victim. In a victim impact statement read to the court, Magella Murphy told Christea she had been torn in half as a direct result of your selfish and despicable actions. She said, "You stole my little brother Adrian from me, and as you are a woman, your actions are even worse than your partner in crime and a complete disgrace. It's very difficult for me not to hate you, but I refuse to hate you and refuse to be like you, so I must forgive you." Specific details about their current prison locations have not been publicly disclosed. Christea appealed her sentence in November 2021, citing two key legal issues. She argued that legal mistakes during the trial impacted the fairness of the proceedings. This included the admission of specific evidence and decisions regarding the jury's instructions, which she believed led to an unsafe conviction. Christea also challenged the credibility of the prosecution's evidence, which they claimed was insufficient or improperly handled, resulting in an unjust conviction. The Court of Appeal ruled that the original judge had not made an error in this case and that the evidence was more than sufficient to uphold the conviction. Her appeal was dismissed, reaffirming the integrity of the trial process. So, what drives a person to commit such depraved acts? As we have heard, motivation one was financial. The perpetrators planned and succeeded in using their victim's identity and possessions to gain significant financial gain. Second is psychological manipulation and deception. The use of anonymous deceptive online interactions to manipulate victims and offer seemingly harmless encounters shows a lack of regard for the emotions, safety, trust, or consequences to those they targeted. Thirdly, we have the chilling lack of remorse or accountability. Osei was described as cold and calculated. The brutal nature of their actions, including the deliberate administration of a deadly toxin, was not an impulsive act, but part of a carefully planned criminal scheme. The fourth motivation is seen in their repeated criminal behavior. They had poisoned at least one other victim before Adrian's death, indicating the poisoning was part of an ongoing, systemic effort to exploit and harm others, as opposed to an isolated incident, suggesting no fear of the consequences. There were also deeper psychological and social factors at play. There was a sense of entitlement and a belief they had the right to take whatever they wanted without regard for the victim. This can be linked to a broader lack of empathy, which is a common feature in individuals who commit such crimes. Their ability to carry out such a crime with such brutality could also be the result of desensitization to violence and a normalization of exploitation. Repeating similar crimes without hesitation suggests they may have viewed their actions as less morally reprehensible or even a form of survival. The cases of Joel Osei and Deanna Christea highlight the dangers posed by online anonymity, especially when combined with manipulation, greed, and a lack of basic humanity. It underlines the ability of criminals to exploit trust and vulnerability for personal gain and the devastating consequences of such behavior. Their actions were premeditated, involving a lack of moral compass and a desire for personal gain at any cost. There may be other victims of Osei and Christea who cannot come forward. We must strive to create a society and environment in which victims feel safe to report fraud, assault, and theft wherever this threat comes from. Adrian Murphy's funeral took place in his hometown of Kilkenny, Ireland, on Saturday, 20th July 2019. He was laid to rest beside his parents in the family plot at St. Kieran's Cemetery. If you have any concerns resulting from this case, please see the contact details in the description for help and advice. But please remember to clear your call history and cache. This episode is dedicated to all victims of abuse and exploitation. Many thanks for listening, and I will see you next time.